Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, October 24, 2023. House Representatives still looking for a speaker. Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota, the current majority whip, was nominated today as the party's new nominee for speaker. He emerged in a 7-candidate race through multiple rounds of secret ballot, but like the previous Republican nominees for speaker, since former Speaker Kevin McCarthy was voted out, it was uncertain whether he had the support of enough Republicans to be elected. In a roll call vote in the private meeting of House Republicans, 26 said they would not vote for him. He could lose only 4. And then former President Donald Trump came out against Tom Emmer's candidacy, and late in the day, Tom Emmer said he is dropping out of the race. Former Trump campaign attorney Jenna Ellis pleads guilty in the Georgia election interference racketeering case, and in a statement to the court tells the judge she now regrets representing then-President Trump after the 2020 election. United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the war between Israel and Hamas, with representatives of Israel and the Palestinian National Authority taking part. And President Joe Biden awards recipients of the National Medal of Science and the National Medal of Technology and Innovation. TheHill.com writes that House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, Republican of Minnesota, dropped out of the Speaker's race on Tuesday just hours after the conference nominated the Minnesota Republican for the top job, according to a source familiar. Emmer withdrew his name from the running after a contingent of Republicans made clear they would not back him on the House floor, making it virtually impossible for him to secure enough votes to win the gavel. It also came after former President Trump released a scathing statement calling Tom Emmer a rhino and saying voting for him would be a tragic mistake. Rhino stands for Republican in name only. Here's some of what happened earlier in the day. Congressman Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana, the majority leader, speaking to reporters outside the closed meeting room of House Republicans, saying that Tom Emmer was still working the room.
First of all, I want to congratulate Tom Emmer on being selected our Speaker designee. I strongly support Tom. We are working right now through some questions still, and we're going to continue having conversations. Obviously, we want to work to make sure when we get to the floor we have 217, and that's something that Tom has said he wants to do before we go to the floor. So, we're going to have some more conversations, but this is an ongoing process. We'd like to wrap this up today, but he's still talking to some individual members.
Is the likelihood of Emmer going to the floor and getting 217, is that pretty low? I mean, these holdouts are hardliners. There are some of the people that opposed you and supported Jordan. These people are known to flip their vote.
Well, there's some conversations. Some are moving. You got to continue having these conversations. That's what we're doing right now.
How long should he stay in?
Well, first of all, he's hearing everybody out. Those conversations are going on as we speak. So that's the first thing that Tom's doing is hearing people out. That's what, frankly, that's what this whole process has been about. And so he's got to hear people out, ultimately work to move them over. And we've got to keep working until we get 217, and I'm going to do what I can to help Tom.
Why are they objecting?
Congressman Steve Scalise, the majority leader, Republican from Louisiana, speaking to reporters earlier today, showing there was some optimism that Congressman Tom Emmer could emerge from the House Republican meeting with the 217 out of 221 Republicans he would need on the House floor to be elected Speaker. That was not to be the case, Congressman Emmer dropping out. The House Republican meeting started this morning with 7 candidates for Speaker, and after each round of secret ballot voting, the candidates with the lowest totals were eliminated. In the first ballot, after the first ballot, Pete Sessions of Texas was out. After the second ballot, Jack Bergman of Michigan dropped out. Austin Scott of Georgia was out after the third ballot. After the fourth round, 2 more candidates, Byron Donalds of Florida and Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, eliminated. And then the fifth and final round, Tom Emmer defeated Mike Johnson of Louisiana by a vote of 117 to 97, 5 members voting for other candidates and 1 voting present. Then there was a roll call vote to see publicly how many votes Congressman Emmer could get in the full House vote, and 26 Republicans said they would not support him. He could only afford to lose 4 and be elected Speaker. By the way, there were 2 other Speaker candidates who dropped out before the voting started today, Gary Palmer of Alabama and Dan Muser of Pennsylvania. Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, Republican, also spoke to reporters about today's votes and how Congressman Emmer was still working that room.
Well, right now, Emmer has secured an overwhelming majority of the vote. There are still some people who have some questions. I think Tom Emmer is showing tremendous leadership. He's standing at the mic. People who have concerns are coming forward, and he's taking them on head to head, not in an adversarial way, but in a way that they have questions. He's providing answers. It is, frankly, a remarkable display of leadership in there.
But he doesn't have 217 votes. I mean, we're going back through this cycle again.
He does not have 217 votes now. I would tell you, I think he's moving the room. And in the same way that Kevin McCarthy did not have 217 votes right away, this is a process. And I think Tom Emmer is showing that he's a real leader.
What are the objections? Until he's able to, is the plan to stay in that room until he has 217?
You know, I don't want to speak for Tom Emmer. He's the speaker designate, just in the same way that Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan were able to make those play calls. He's going to get an opportunity to make those play calls.
Let me ask you, what are the objections? It's mostly House Freedom Caucus.
I mean, I don't want to talk about what's being said in that room because we try to maintain the privilege of that room. But I would say that clearly it's been publicly reported that people have some concerns about Tom's votes. But I would also say that there are a number of people who are concerned with anybody who's been a part of leadership ascending to the speakership. They think that completely new blood is necessary. I think Tom's done a good job of saying, listen, I've been in this job for 9 months. And during that time, I've helped you all work to pass legislation that people didn't think we could get done. I think that's a strength. And it's not like he's been in leadership for 20 years.
Is there any sign that he'll be willing to make any deals with members in the room in order to get to 217?
One of the things that I think won a big round of applause inside the room was that Tom Emmer said, listen, we're not going to do this shuttle diplomacy. We're not going to break up into small rooms. I'm not going to say one thing to you differently than what I'm going to say to you. We're going to be in this room. And we're going to talk about how to move forward. Tom Emmer's putting on a master class in there about how to stand in the fire, answer questions in front of a room of 200, frankly, very opinionated members, and I think he's winning Congress.
Can you tell us what the number is of folks who didn't vote for Emmer?
I can't tell you that. That's not my news to share, but I would say that I think those who have concerns are being upfront, they're being honest, they're not lying in the weeds. This is not a clean process, but it feels like a healthy one. Thanks very much, everyone.
Congressman Dusty Johnson, Republican from South Dakota, mid-afternoon, as Congressman Tom Emmer, Republican from Minnesota, the majority whip, and getting a majority of House Republicans to support him as the new Speaker designate. We're still talking with the holdouts that he would be needing from his own party in order to be elected Speaker. Again, it was not to be the case later in the day. He dropped out of the race for Speaker. Congressman Matt Rosendale, Republican of Montana, posting, this morning, a Republican conference met to elect a Speaker. I supported Kevin Hern until he was eliminated from the ballot, at which time I supported Mike Johnson. Tom Emmer has secured the nomination, but no longer has a path to secure 217 votes. It's time to get back into the room and give Kevin Hern and Mike Johnson an opportunity to get to 217. Congressman Troy Nehls, Republican from Texas, was one of the 26 House Republicans who said publicly he would not vote for Tom Emmer on the floor. He came out, that is Troy Nehls, and spoke with reporters about why.
How you voted in there?
I voted present. So you got to understand, you go through the alphabet. You start at A, and you move your way forward through the alphabet. By the time it got to the letter N, I voted present. I think there were 4 others, maybe 5 others. At that point in time, we already had upwards of 20 that said that they could not support Tom Emmer for Speaker, and this was a roll call vote. This was no, secret ballot. This was everybody having the stand. And in the end, I think there were maybe 28 or so that stated they're going to choose someone else other than Tom Emmer. I think Johnson had some. I think Jim Jordan had the most with about 12 or 15. So this is we are again back to where we started. This is where we're at. So now you had 8 willing to step up and try to provide that leadership, and we're not there. So now what are we going to do? We're going to find another round. Let's go into the 3rd round of draft choices, right, and find people willing to do this again. I don't know.
Is it not the case that Mr. Emmer is going to decide whether to go to the floor?
If he wants to go to the floor, he can go to the floor. If we go to the floor, you know what I'm doing. I mean, let's make no mistake. I'll be nominating Donald J. Trump.
So you will definitely not vote for Mr. Emmer on the floor?
I will be going. I told Tom Emmer I won't be the one that would tank him, right? If he can get to 216, he could probably have me at 217. But when it gets to my name and there's 10, 12, 15. I think Donald Trump is their answer.
Why is there so much opposition to Emmer at this point?
I don't know. I mean, he obviously people are talking. He's had some issues with the former president. I think some of the comments that he's made in the past, I'm not going to get specific, but I think it's causing him some problems today.
Congressman Troy Nehls, Republican from Texas, with reporters as it was at that point still uncertain whether Congressman Tom Emmer, Republican from Minnesota, would be able to go to the House floor and get the required House Republican votes to be elected Speaker. He did get a majority of House Republicans to nominate him as Speaker in a closed session, but he would need almost all of them on the House floor in order to be elected. And later in the day, he said, I don't have that, and he dropped out of the race. Former President Donald Trump posting about Tom Emmer, calling him a globalist rhino, Republican in name only, and that electing him Speaker would be a tragic mistake. Congressman Jim Banks, Republican of Indiana, also voted for somebody else for Speaker today, voted for Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, and told reporters why he would not be supporting Congressman Emmer.
I'm a conservative. I came to Washington to fight for conservative values. I can't go along with putting one of the most moderate members of the entire Republican conference in the Speaker's chair. That betrays the conservative values that I came here to fight for. So I hope there's a change along the way. He doesn't have the support in the room right now. Dozens of members that won't vote for him at this point. It's been a heated discussion from members at the microphone. We'll see where we go from here.
Congressman Jim Banks, Republican from Indiana, with reporters. Also coming out to speak with the gaggle of reporters, the former Speaker of the House, Republican Kevin McCarthy of California.
The same opposition you face is the same people who ousted you that are opposing him?
No, I only had 8 against me.
Is this the beauty of this conference? Any number of people can always just come together to form an opposition? It feels that way.
We're in a very bad place.
Should he wait until he has 217 votes to go to the floor?
I would. I'd have that discussion here. That's exactly what he's doing right now.
So what if that doesn't happen today?
You're in a very bad place. It's a pretty strong phrase to use. Why do you think you're in a bad place?
We've been 3 weeks without a speaker. We let 8 people work with every single Democrat to put us in here to go directly against what our conference rules say, that if you do a motion to vacate, you have to have 50% of the conference. And so now we're in a situation where remove the Speaker, remove the Majority Leader from being Speaker, remove Jim Jordan from being Speaker, every single person that's won. And now we just gone through a battle with elections of 9 people, 1-1. And now when we had a roll call vote, you couldn't get 217.
But have you heard from anyone who's thinking maybe it wasn't so...
What is the option now? There are 26 members who are against Tom Emmer. There is no path for him at the moment. What is the option for you guys?
All right, let's not be so negative.
Well, you've been 3 weeks without a speaker, and you guys.
I know, but I went 15 rounds. He had the first round. He's answering whatever questions somebody has, and I think some of the questions people have, they haven't given Tom the opportunity yet to even ask him that and have him answer that. And I actually think this is the best way to go about doing it. Let whoever has a difference of opinion come to the microphone, go directly to Tom and ask him the question, and Tom can answer.
So they're venting this in real time in the room in front of everyone?
Do you think this is going to move the needle at all with having this discussion face-to-face?
I'm sure hope so. I've been wrong on the last 2.
How long will that possibly take, though? Airing of grievances, getting people on board, that sounds like a pretty long process if there's 20-plus people opposed.
I don't think it's that much. So, I mean, I think he's making movement now, but look, I'm not the best judge. I don't know exactly.
Are you concerned that there are members who are going to get tired of this and might go and start working with Democrats to get a Republican speaker at this point?
That very well can happen, but I'll tell you, every member's tired of this. Every member's tired of those 8 who work with every single Democrat. So if your question is, are we worried that some members might go work with Democrats? That's already happened. The 8 members worked with every single Democrat to put us in this place. So we're tired of that, of why we're here now, by those 8 who worked with every single Democrat. That is why we're where we are.
Congressman Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, former Speaker of the House, speaking to reporters mid-afternoon when Congressman Tom Emmer, Republican from Minnesota and the Majority Whip, was still working with the 24+ House Republicans who would not support him on the House floor to try to get their support, which would be necessary in order to be elected Speaker. That didn't happen, and later in the day, Congressman Emmer dropped out of the race. We are now hearing From Jake Sherman, Punchbowl News, that candidates for Speaker need to declare by 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and at 6 p.m. Eastern, House Republican Speaker candidate form happens again. Congressman Mike Gallagher, Republican from Wisconsin, spoke to reporters as the members were meeting again this afternoon to discuss what to do next.
Yeah,
we're going to do it again. Another round of Speaker candidates and Speaker election.
It'll be a forum, like a reopened candidate list?
Yeah.
And another forum?
Forum-ish, probably shorter than normal forums, yeah.
Imminently, or?
I think around 6 p.m.
Around 6 p.m.,
yeah.
okay.
Shorter than normal.
Do they feed you guys? You guys get your food? You've been out here all day. Oh my gosh.
You know, sometimes there's extra pizza from you guys.
Yeah.
But American public, I mean, at this point, people are completely confused over how the Republican Party, the Republican Conference could get in this position. How did this happen? Where are you?
My theory is this is the product of decades of institutional neglect. So if you have people that feel no loyalty to an institution like Congress because it's weak, they've gone from being the most powerful branch of government to the weakest, and they're not going to abide by the rules of conference or the norms of congressional behavior. And it just seems like, you know, if you disagree with someone on one policy position, like a lot of people disagree with Emmer's position on gay marriage, I guess, that's enough to say you won't support it for Speaker. We can't operate that way as a party. Like we're a Big Ten party. You're never going to agree 100% with anybody. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
How's your baby?
She is good, and
good.
the toddler is great. Democrats had basically the same margins last Congress, and they passed trillions of dollars of their priorities. Why are Republicans so different?
Well, Pelosi ruled with an iron fist. People feared her. The Republican Party is a little bit different. I actually think, on balance, it's a feature, not a bug, of the Republican Party that we have like room for dissent, and it isn't like a top-down leadership model. But I don't know. We got to coalesce around. As a representative from Green Bay, the Republican representative from Green Bay, it pains me to ask this question, but I'm not sure who sucks at team sports more right now, the Packers or the House Republican Caucus.
Did Mr. Emmer speak to the conference and provide an explanation for withdrawing?
He said didn't have the numbers. Yeah.
Who does have the numbers?
This is a great question. This is the question. Hey, if you know the answer to that, you can be Speaker of the House.
Are there specific candidates who are going to be speaking at 6 during the forum?
I think you can expect the candidates who ran last time, and then some new ones to enter.
You're not running, are you?
I am not running.
Any names? Any new names?
I think Mark Green's running. Yeah. Fact check me on that. Yeah.
Who will you support this time around?
I gotta hear the candidates. So, but as always, I will on the floor support whoever gets the most votes in conference. And that's what everyone needs to get back to. So.
What do you think the world is thinking as they watch what's happening here?
What is the world thinking?
I know you're very national security minded.
Yeah, I claim not to speak for the world.
Are you concerned though about what this says about American readiness?
We have very important things we need to get done. A defense appropriation with a plus up for Israel and Taiwan, potentially a parallel negotiation on Ukraine and border. We have FISO reform and REOF that needs to happen. Farm bill. I mean, just the end of the year homework is piling up. So I am concerned that the longer we spend fighting amongst ourselves, it makes it harder to do that in a way that will allow us to negotiate effectively with the Senate. And every second we spend on this is a second we risk getting steamrolled by Schumer and the Senate. I mean, we can't. How do we negotiate if we don't have a speaker? We might eat with shutdown politics a massive omnibus or supplemental that doesn't reflect conservative priorities. So that's my legislative concern here. So we gotta go, guys.
There's going to be a forum tonight, but are there going to be further votes tonight as well?
I think so. I mean, we'll have a vote after the candidates make their case. We'll vote on that, and then if it looks like that person is close to 217, I guess theoretically we could go to the floor.
Why not?
Hey, why not?
Why not?
Hey, there we go. See? Hope springs eternal.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, Republican from Wisconsin, speaking to reporters after today's events. For the third time, House Republicans nominating a speaker, that person getting a majority of the House Republican Conference, but not being able to get the 217 out of 221 votes needed to be elected Speaker on the House floor. Today it was Tom Emmer of Minnesota. In the past 2 weeks, it was Steve Scalise of Louisiana and Jim Jordan of Ohio. House Democrats also meeting today, and the caucus chair, Pete Aguilar of California, talking to reporters at a news conference.
Chaos and dysfunction continue to be the order of the day on the House Republican majority. Today is day 21 without a speaker, and the other side is back to square one. After the failure of MAGA extremists Jim Jordan, multiple candidates have emerged now to see if they can be the ones to get 217, if any of them at all can get that done. The American people and our allies abroad can't afford any more delays. Every day of this MAGA madness is another day of not sending aid to Israel and Ukraine, not taking meaningful steps to fund our government, and not making sure that we're looking out for working families across this country. It's another day of being away from our districts and talking to folks in our communities who elected us to work on their business, the people's business, not to be here and to babysit House Republicans as their party infighting further cripples the integrity of this institution. House Republicans can continue down the path of destruction, or they can work with House Democrats in a bipartisan path forward to get back to doing the people's business. The clock is ticking, and the chaos and the dysfunction, and let's get back to work.
Congressman Pete Aguilar, Democrat from California, caucus chair at a news conference today. Stay with the C-SPAN networks, TV, radio, online for the Speaker's race as it goes forward. Associated Press out of Atlanta reporting that attorney and prominent conservative media figure Jenna Ellis pleaded guilty on Tuesday to reduced charge over efforts to overturn Donald Trump's 2020 election loss in Georgia, tearfully telling the judge she looks back on that time with deep remorse. Jenna Ellis pleaded guilty to a felony count of aiding and abetting false statements and writings. She had been facing charges of violating Georgia's Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, and soliciting the violation of oath by a public officer. That from Associated Press. Here is Jenna Ellis' statement before sentencing in the courtroom in Atlanta.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
And then thank you, Ms. Ellis, for sharing that all too often. I don't get to hear the perspective of the accused in these cases, and so that's appreciated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Attorney Jenna Ellis and Judge Scott McAfee in the Fulton County, Georgia courtroom today. She is the fourth defendant in this case to take a plea deal with prosecutors. In all, there are 18 defendants, including former President Donald Trump. She has been sentenced to 5 years probation, $5,000 in restitution, 100 hours of community service, and must write an apology letter to the people of Georgia and testify truthfully in trials related to this case. From the New York Times, Michael D. Cohen attacked his one-time boss, Donald J. Trump, from the witness stand on Tuesday, accusing the former president of manipulating his net worth as Mr. Trump, seated feet away, stared blankly ahead. In the early afternoon, just before lunch break in a Manhattan courtroom, Mr. Cohen began to testify about the annual financial statements that are at the heart of a civil fraud trial against the former president that was brought by the New York Attorney General Letitia James. Mr. Cohen testified, "I was tasked by Mr. Trump to increase the total assets based upon a number that he arbitrarily elected." Mr. Cohen said it was his responsibility to increase those assets in order to achieve the number that Mr. Trump had tasked us. That from the New York Times. Michael Cohen spoke to reporters on the street before heading to court this morning.
Sorry, credibility. Now you're going to court. How long has it been since you've seen him? And what do you say to those who wonder about your credibility?
So it's been 5 years since we've been in the same room. And as far as my credibility, I don't know how many times I've said it. I'm actually glad that I have the press here today. My credibility should not be in question. Yes, I pled guilty to a 1001 violation, which was lying to Congress. But I have also requested that people continue the sentence. And the sentence is, I did it at the direction of, in concert with, and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. All it had to do with was the number of times that I stated that I spoke to Donald Trump about the failed Trump Tower Moscow real estate project. The Mueller team acknowledged it, congressional committees acknowledged it, and I'm certain that the judge today will acknowledge it as well.
And how do you feel about seeing, what do you think it's for you emotionally and for him, seeing him being in the same room?
I'm looking forward to the reunion. All right. Well, thank you all very much, and I'll see you a few minutes down at the courthouse.
Michael Cohen with reporters on the street in New York. At the courthouse, Donald Trump spoke to reporters there about Michael Cohen's credibility and the civil fraud charges he and his company are facing.
Served a lot of time in the line, and we're going to just go in and see, and I think you'll see that for yourself very easily. The Southern District came out with a scathing statement about him. So he's a liar, trying to get a better deal for himself, but it's not going to work. This case, by any other judge, this case would have been over a long time ago. We did nothing wrong, and that's been proven. Thank you. We'll be out there.
Sidney Powell and Ted Jethro pleading guilty in response to that.
Donald Trump at the courthouse in New York City. From the Hill newspaper, the Senate on Tuesday struck a deal on 3 bipartisan government funding bills, allowing lawmakers to move forward on legislation the chamber has been working to move forward on to the floor since last month. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, announced the long-awaited deal on amendments on Thursday, teeing up more than 3 dozen amendments for consideration in the coming days and final passage of the trio of bills, better known as a minibus. That from the Hill. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington State, chairs the Appropriations Committee, talked about this on the Senate floor.
After many discussions with members on both sides of the aisle about ensuring a robust amendment process and a final vote on this strong bipartisan package of appropriation bills, I am pleased to say we have reached an agreement to finally get voting on the amendments and passage of this minibus. I want to thank everyone who's worked with me and the senior senator from Maine so we can get this process moving again to show the American people this place can actually work. This is so important, especially right now, because over the last few weeks, the American people have seen a lot of chaos and dysfunction in Congress. And it has come at a time when the world needs to see U.S. leadership is still strong, because, Madam President, it's not just the American people who are watching Congress right now. Our allies are watching. Our adversaries are watching. We need to show them that we are still able to work together and solve problems and respond effectively to the pressing challenges of this moment. And this is an important opportunity to do just that. By passing this package, we can continue moving on our appropriations process, and we can show that by working together in a bipartisan way, you can actually get things done in a divided Congress. And that's important because there's a lot we absolutely have to get done. There is this first package of appropriations bills, there's the rest of our appropriation bills, and the pressing need to address all sorts of urgent priorities, including supplemental funding to support our allies in Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, to deliver additional disaster relief, address the worsening child care crisis, and more. And getting all of this done is going to require us to put aside our differences and work together.
Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington State, chair of the Appropriations Committee on the Senate floor, announcing the agreement on amendments to move forward on the 3 funding bill package known as a minibus, funding military construction and the Departments of Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Transportation, and Housing and Urban Development. Wall Street today, the Dow up 204, NASDAQ up 121, S&P up 30. The United Auto Workers, writes the Detroit Free Press, expanded its ongoing strike Tuesday to one of General Motors' most profitable factories in North America, Arlington Assembly Plant in Texas. The union ordered about 5,000 members at that plant to walk out and join the so-called stand-up strike at 10 a.m. GM builds its highly profitable Chevrolet Tahoe and Suburban, Cadillac Escalade, and GMC Yukon big SUVs at Arlington. The move comes on the day that GM reported its third quarter earnings had taken a hit in part due to the strike. GM said the strike so far had an incremental $600 million hit to its earnings before interest and taxes, and moving forward it estimated the impact of the strike to be about $200 million per week based on the facilities impacted as of Sunday. The latest strike expansions comes after the UAW ordered 6,800 members of Stellantis' Sterling Heights assembly plant to go on the picket line on Monday. That plant builds the Ram pickup truck. That reporting from Detroit Free Press. Washington Today continues in a moment.
When citizens are truly informed, our republic thrives. Get informed straight from the source on C-SPAN. Unfiltered, unbiased, word for word. From the nation's capital to wherever you are. Because the opinion that matters the most is your own. This is what democracy looks like. C-SPAN, powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcast and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. This story from Reuters. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded on Tuesday for civilians to be protected in the war between Israel and Palestinian Hamas militants, voicing concern about clear violations of international humanitarian law in the Gaza Strip. More than 700 Palestinians were killed in overnight Israeli airstrikes, Gaza's health ministry said, the highest 24-hour death toll since Israel began a bombing campaign to crush Hamas militants who stunned the country with a deadly October 7th attack. That was from Reuters. Here's Secretary General Guterres at the United Nations Security Council meeting in New York.
I have condemned unequivocally the horrifying and unprecedented 7 October acts of terror by Hamas in Israel. Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring, and kidnapping of civilians or the launching of rockets against civilian targets. All hostages must be treated humanely and released immediately and without conditions. And I respectfully note the presence among us of members of their families. Excellencies, it is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Excellencies, even war has rules. We must demand that all parties uphold and respect their obligations under international humanitarian law, take constant care in the conduct of military operations to spare civilians, and respect and protect hospitals, and respect the inviolability of UN facilities, which today are sheltering more than 600,000 Palestinians.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres at a UN Security Council meeting in New York City today. Israel's ambassador to the UN, after hearing that speech, called on the Secretary General to resign because the Secretary General was calling for a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. Ambassador Gilead Erdogan said on X, formerly Twitter, the UN Secretary General, who shows understanding for the campaign of mass murder of children, women, and the elderly, is not fit to lead the UN. I call on him to resign immediately. Representatives of Israel and the Palestinian National Authority spoke at today's UN Security Council meeting. The Palestinian Foreign Minister, Riyad al-Maliki, went first.
We are here today to stop the killing, to stop the massacres being committed against the Palestinian people. The ongoing massacres being deliberately and systematically and savagely perpetrated by Israel, the occupying power, against the Palestinian civilian population under its illegal occupation must be stopped. The Security Council has a duty to stop them. The international community is obliged under international law to stop them. It is our collective human duty to stop them. Now, continued failure at this Council is inexcusable. Mr. President, we express appreciation to Brazil for convening this session of the Security Council and elevating its participation in light of the gravity of the situation we are facing. We thank the Secretary General of the United Nations for his sobering briefing and for his tireless efforts, and that of the UN agencies and humanitarian staff on the ground, particularly UNRWA, working round the clock under the most inhumane conditions to aid our people and uphold a minimum sense of humanity. We mourn with them the senseless killing of UNRWA staff and other humanitarian workers, including doctors, nurses, and paramedics, who were directly targeted by this ongoing barbarous aggression. They are heroic champions of humanity at a time of abject depravity.
Riyad al-Maliki, Foreign Affairs Minister of the Palestinian National Authority, at the United Nations Security Council meeting in New York City. He was followed by the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister, Eli Cohen.
We, Israel, we don't only have the right to defend ourselves. We have the duty to do so. This is not a right. This is a duty. I want to speak to all of you and to tell you, the West is next. The West is next. The war which was imposed on us, there is no side. This war was imposed on us. Is not only Israel's war. It is the war of the free world. I hear the call for proportionality. I hear the calls, as said Lynn before, for a ceasefire. Tell me, what is a proportionate response for killing of babies? For rape women and burn them? For beheading of a child? How you can agree to a ceasefire with someone who swore to kill and destroy your own existence? How? The proportional response to October 7 massacre is a total destruction to the last one of the Hamas. It is not only Israel's right to destroy Hamas, it's our duty. For Israel, it's a matter of survival. The free world should remember and never forget what happened on October 7th. Today, this barbaric terror hit Israel. Tomorrow, it will be at everyone's doorstep, at everyone's doorstep.
The Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Eli Cohen at the United Nations Security Council today. CNN writes that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Tuesday called on UN Security Council member states to use their leverage to stop the Israel-Hamas war from expanding, urging them in particular to warn Iran that any involvement would be met with consequences. The top U.S. diplomat noted the uptick in attacks by Iranian proxies against U.S. interests in the region and relayed his message to the country. He said, "What we've consistently said to Iranian officials through other channels, the United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen, but if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people. We will defend our security swiftly and decisively. That from CNN. At the White House, John Kirby, the Strategic Communications Coordinator for the National Security Council, asked about this.
There have been a spate of attacks on U.S. forces in the region, and can you characterize the threat that the U.S. faces in the region right now as Israel poises itself to invade Gaza? And then I have a question about Australia.
We remain deeply concerned by the potential for future attacks on our troops. As you're right, we've seen, and I'm guesstimating here, but it's about a dozen over the last several days. And as a result, tragically, one U.S. contractor died as a result of a heart attack from sheltering. So it's potentially a dangerous environment, and we're taking it very, very seriously. Our commanders on the ground have the right to defend themselves and their troops and can take the appropriate and are taking the appropriate force protection measures. And as you know, the president has added additional military force to the region, and now one of those carrier strike groups is going to go on through to the Gulf region to make sure that we send a strong signal of not only deterrence, but our willingness to protect and defend ourselves and our national interests.
John Kirby is a spokesperson for the White House National Security Council, taking reporters' questions today in the White House briefing room. From Reuters, the French President Emmanuel Macron proposed on Tuesday that an international coalition fighting against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, be widened to include the fight against the Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza. Macron gave no detail on how the U.S.-led coalition of dozens of countries, of which Israel is not a member, could be involved. Speaking alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, Macron stressed that France and Israel shared terrorism as their common enemy. This is Washington Today. Back in Washington at the White House, President Biden awarded National Medals of Science and National Medals of Technology and Innovation, highest honors the U.S. can bestow upon scientists and engineers. The president spoke in the East Room of the White House.
The National Medal of Science is given for outstanding contributions to knowledge in the sciences, and the National Medal of Technology and Innovation for outstanding contributions to the promotion of technology for the improvement of the economic, environmental, social well-being of the United States. With this year's recipients, outstanding may be an understatement. They're extraordinary, delivering clean drinking water and fuel-efficient heat sources to low-income countries, growing crops that can withstand extreme weather, deepening our knowledge of blood vessels, nerve cells, and molecules, pointing the way toward new treatments for diseases like cancer, Parkinson's, and addiction, transforming how we live, work, and communicate by helping create advanced manufacturing and expand access to the internet, protecting our democracy by developing new technologies to protect the right to vote, making our world more accessible by creating the next generation wheelchair technology, expanding our understanding of everything from the depths of the human eye to the depths of the universe. And they have paved the way for a generation of other scientists and innovators to pursue their own discoveries, to unlock our nation's full potential. To all the honorees, thank you, thank you, thank you for your courage, for your perseverance, and maybe most importantly, for your integrity.
President Biden at the White House awarding the National Medals of Science and of Technology and Innovation, 19 total medals. The National Medal of Science, first awarded in 1963. A committee of scientists chooses the winner from a list of nominees. The Medal and Technology Innovation Award dates from 1985. A selection committee reviews nominees and makes recommendations to the president, who selects the winners. First Lady Jill Biden previewed Wednesday's state dinner with the visiting Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The dinner will be held on the White House South Lawn and cap off a state visit that is scheduled to include an Oval Office meeting and joint news conference with President Biden. First Lady joined by the White House Social Secretary, the guest chef, the White House executive chef and pastry chef, and First Lady Jill Biden announcing that you might have seen that a certain rock group would be performing at this state dinner will no longer be doing so.
Nurturing our partnerships and relationships with our allies is critically important, especially in these tumultuous times. Food is comforting, reassuring, and healing. And we hope that this dinner provides a little of that as well. And while we had initially planned for the legendary B-52s to perform their iconic dance and party music, we are now in a time when so many are facing sorrow and pain. So we made a few adjustments to the entertainment portion of the evening. The band will attend the dinner as guests, and the President's own Marine Band and the Army and Air Force Strolling Strings will provide instrumental music for the dinner. The United States and Australia may stand on opposite sides of the globe, different hemispheres, different seasons, but despite our distance, we share so much. A dedication to democracy, a reverence for freedom, a devotion to equality, and a love for the natural wonders of our nation.
First Lady Jill Biden at the White House, a preview of the state dinner Wednesday with the visiting Australian Prime Minister, joined by the Social Secretary and the chefs. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word. It's free, and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.